up, everybody? Welcome to the 5th edition of the Shot 3 from the Tee podcast. Thank you for coming back for another edition. Hopefully you've found the first couple to be relatively useful, at least, and we've put out some pretty good information and had a lot of fun with it as well. These short-form podcasts, or what I'm going to call them at least, I believe they just give people an opportunity to listen to me and not get bored of me because, like I've said a couple of times, I get bored of me after talking for a couple of minutes. So this one may be a little bit shorter. We're still going to have our buddy Matt Jones at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter going to be joining us for the second half of this to talk about some statistical stuff. And he built a really fun, useful tool over the last week or so that we will chat about. It basically calculates the approach proximities for all of the players. So we'll dig into that on our 10 to 15 minutes later on. So, without further ado, let's head into the breakdown of the salaries and let's see how I did. So, let's recap first what I thought it was going to be. I had JT at 12.3, Rory at 11.9, Tiger at 10.9, Decky at 10.7, Xander at 10.4, Fleetwood at 10.3, Finau 10.1, and I thought they might put Paul Casey at 10K and Spieth at 9.5K. However, when the odds came out this morning, that obviously changed pretty quickly when Jordan Spieth was 20-1 on the odds. So we'll start with him. He is 10K this week, so I was off by 500 again. They throw Spieth right back in at 10K, even at the stronger field. And then above Spieth this week is Paul Casey at 10.1. So I guess I was right there in a way. Xander at 10.4, I nailed. I don't know if I said 10.4. We'll have to go back and check the tapes on that one. But it was Xander Matsuyama. So I got Matsuyama, who is coming in at 10.7K. So I was able to get him correct. And then Rory comes in 11.5 and JT at 11.8. Tiger comes in at 9.3. So that was my big miss of the week. They moved Spieth up. I got all the other guys that were priced over 10K at least correct. Thought they might throw in Fleetwood and Finau. So I didn't get them correct. But I at least got all of the guys and their position correct. Got JT, Rory. So not a bad week. Give myself like an 84 or an 85. Not bad. Like I said again, I got a couple there. So, all right, now we're gonna head into learn a little bit about the field, and I really like this. I really like this segment, especially for weeks like this where we're not gonna know a lot of the golfers, or no, I shouldn't say a lot of them. We're not gonna know some of them, and then in other weeks, this is also the segment where I go over the Monday qualifiers, obviously because I don't have those on the Opening Tee podcast. And also any field changes that we may have. So, not any field changes, at least up until this point. Don't expect anybody to withdraw. A lot of people making the trip over to Japan. I highly doubt they're going to fly all the way to Japan and withdraw. So, definitely not expecting that this week. So, we'll jump right into the field. And last night, I gave you the breakdown of where the field came from. And we'll go into the actual players. So, the first one we're going to learn about is the winner of the Bridgestone Open, Shugo Imihara. Shugo is a 27-year-old now from Japan. He's been playing really good on the Japanese tour. Also, he played in the Sony Open last year. Played pretty good. Played not bad, at least. I shouldn't say that good, at least. He played pretty good. Made the cut. Seen his name a couple of more times. Missed the majors. Missed the cut at the majors this year. So nothing too exciting from Shugo Imihara, except for the win at the Bridgestone Open that happened pretty recently. The next one, the PGA Tour has as the name Steve Han. It's actually Sang Soo Han is the actual, I believe, his official name. A 33-year-old from the United States, but he's playing on the Japanese tour. And also gets in, this is the Bridgestone Open exemption. He came in tied for second with the next one, and this is going to be a tough one. Tomo Haru Ozaki. I'll guess. That's a guess there. So we're we're going to hope that I got that right. And he's a 29-year-old from Japan. He's ranked 234th in the world. So those are the three from the Bridgestone Open that we have this week playing in the ZOZO Championship. Now, the next qualifications for the ZOZO Championship this week are top 7 from the Japanese Tour. Roy Ishikawa is the first one, a 28-year-old from Japan. He almost won the 2013 Shriners Open, which is interesting. The Shriners Open, obviously, we just had a couple of weeks ago. It was his best finish as a PGA Tour pro. He actually held his card for quite a while, lost it, was away from the game for, I think, a year or two, and now is back and playing really good on the Japanese Tour. And obviously, with some PGA Tour experience, he'll be thrilled to go back out there and compete with those guys this week. So good on him. The next guy is Jana. We saw him last week, and we know at least a little bit about him. The next one is a 26-year-old from Japan, ranked 199th in the world. It's Yosuke Azaji. Again, I'm trying my best here. Hopefully you guys don't make fun of me too much about it. The next one is Sang Hyun Park. Saw last week he finished tied for 60th. He's ranked 118th in the world. Next one is Raiku Hoshino, a 23-year-old from Japan. He's had 2 wins on the Japanese Tour since turning pro 2 years ago. So a young prospect there is Hoshino. The next one is Chan Kim. He's 75th in the world right now after his Japan Open win not too long ago. He played in both majors, both Opens this year, the British and the U.S., and missed the cut in both of them. So at least a little bit of experience. Then the last one from this category is Shawn Norris. Shawn Norris, the world traveler from South Africa, currently ranked 96th in the world as he just came in a tie for second at that same Japan Open. So pretty good. Shawn Norris, definitely a birdie maker. We've seen him in a WGC event before, so maybe a name you recognize. So the next qualification we have, of course, the top 60 players from the Fedex Cup Rankings that are available to play. So in that, as I mentioned last night, we had 31 of the top 50 in the world out of that, so very good. Then we get 4 sponsors exemptions this week. 4 sponsors exemptions that are restricted. Those restricted sponsors exemption spots went to Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Pat Perez, and Bubba Watson. And the 4 unrestricted sponsor exemptions this week went to Daniel Berger, Mikumu Horikawa. We've seen him once this year. Satoshi Kodaira, who we know from the PGA Tour, obviously winning the RBC Heritage a year and a half ago there. And Junichiro Kozuma gets the last sponsors exemption. So pretty good field again. Like I said, that actually finishes our segment 1 here. And not bad, about 10 minutes. I expected it to be maybe a little bit shorter, so not bad. And we will come on the other side of this with segment 2 with Matt Jones here in just a little bit. Thanks for joining the first part of the Shot 3 from the Tee podcast for the ZOZO Championship. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, welcome back to the second segment here of Shot 3 from the Tee with myself and Matt Jones. Joining me again this week at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter. And we got some fun stuff to talk about. Matt has been a little bit busy, both with football and with golf, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that he made for this week. But Matt, what's happening in your neck of the woods? I know we're going during a baseball game, maybe during a baseball game, but a football game from my guys against some of the guys near where you live. What team do you root for? The Giants or the Jets or neither?
Yeah, no, I'm a Giants fan. So
okay,
I'm not,
all right. Yeah.
I'm not being subjected to this level of nonsense right now. This is bad.
Crazy. It's pretty bad. But this week, the PGA Tour is heading to Japan, and I don't think we'll see the NFL in Japan anytime soon. But hey, you never know. I mean, we're going to see them in London quite a bit more. Anyways, we're going to the ZOZO Championship, and we got a little sneak peek of the golf course last night, if you were able to stay up or not, but should set up for a really fun time. I talked about this, obviously, in the Opening Tee podcast about the course, but two pretty unique features. It's under 7,100 yards, and it is a par 70. So let's start off with those two numbers. Any interesting findings in the strokes gained of those?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, too, just as far as the course goes, it is interesting. There's actually quite a few long par fours on the course, which as I was looking, typically you look at the total and you're like, oh, all right, you get a feel for what the course sort of entails, but 4 par fours between like 480 and 510, so definitely some longer holes than you'd think on a track like this, which I thought was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's kind of hidden in the par threes where it gets the under 7,100, right? Because all the par threes are, for the most part, under 200 yards, between that 150 and 200 range. So it can play a lot longer. It seemed like last night, watching the 4 guys that played, it did seem like they were having quite a bit of long irons. I think Jason Day even had a 3-wood into one of the par 4s, and that 4th hole with the double water hazards and in the double greens. And if you guys didn't catch any of it, every green here has 2 greens. So just funny to bring that up. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on our 2 stats that we were looking at. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as the splits go, it's a guy who I hesitate to bring up because he hasn't played particularly well lately, but Ryan Moore has some of the best splits as far as DraftKings scoring between longer courses over 7,200 and under 7,200 yards. He also hits almost 3/4 of his greens on these shorter courses and gains twice as many strokes tee to green. So definitely popping in a couple different ways, but obviously the form isn't exactly pristine at this point.
No, but I really think it has something more so to do with the putting. If I'm not mistaken, he was bogey 3 through 36, if not 54 last week. I know at least 36. So really interesting name. 7,800 on DK, 8,800 on FanDuel this week. Really like Ryan Moore. It's a really interesting play. Okay, how about another one?
Another guy. I keep going back to this Ches Reavie well.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's not gone terribly well for me. But he's 7,400. He has the same deal, like just significantly better splits as far as the shorter courses go. Over the last 50 rounds, he is 37th in DraftKings points, all like overall, but 10th on these shorter courses. So shows some scoring upside on these shorter courses for sure.
Yeah, and certainly we saw that at the Travelers there in Cromwell, Connecticut. That I think that's like 6,900 yards, if I'm not mistaken, and he obviously broke through there. So no surprise. Also, just trying to pull up how was his stats last week? I have it up in front of me here now. The greens and regulation, of course, is the one we want to look at. It looks like Reavie. We're not the oldest. Reavie, I'm just... Because I always like to check in on Reavie. He seems like a form golfer. We talk about that quite a bit. Hit about 70% of his greens towards the bottom, so have to pick up his iron play a little bit. But at 7,400, you can certainly get away with a little bit. All right, so those are two pretty good ones there. Anything else that you want to bring up before we move on to what you've been working on, at least on your own time?
Just a couple of quick names.
Sure.
As far as like really good splits for DraftKings scoring, Kevin Na is 42nd on regular courses and 8th in short courses.
Love Kevin Na. Okay, yep.
So that'll work. And then Rory Sabatini is 22nd overall, so reasonable anyway, but 12th when you filter down to this yardage. So just a couple other guys in that sort of mid-range. Obviously a guy like Rory is first in short and regular DraftKings scoring, so you can't really penalize him for not having a positive split. He's just first regardless.
Yeah, we're talking about Rory McIlroy here, obviously. Rory Sabatini is in the field this week, 7,100 for Rory Sabatini. So I thought maybe we're gonna go there for a second.
He's got good splits too, yeah.
Yeah, he does. No, not bad. I would like to see him finish a little bit better yesterday, to be completely honest with you. So. Now, you mentioned at the top of this that the course has some longer par 4s and really doesn't have any par 4s between 400 and 480. I mentioned that on the opening tee podcast last night. And what you've done is you've basically taken a simulator, and I'll have you explain this a little better because it's going to sound funny for me. But what you've been able to do is break down the entire field based on their average driving distance or the hole and project out how many shots from each proximity each player will hit. So you've put this up on your Twitter for free. It's really interesting, great to look at. You can really hone in on guys that are significantly better from distances and if they're going to have those opportunities this week and what you projected. So before we go into it, tell the people a little bit more that I might have missed in that description.
Yeah, no, I think you pretty much hit it. I mean, the trouble for me always with courses that we've never seen before is just trying to figure out things like this. And now that I actually have some coding ability, I can actually do the things that I wanted to do to figure this stuff out. So basically what I did was I took everybody in the field's driving distance and sort of their volatility and driving distance, and I made a simulator that had them play each hole 500 times.
Love it. And, yes.
And so I averaged out what their average proximity would be on each hole. So if you, like you mentioned, if you go over to my Twitter, there's a proximity, like a density chart for the whole field. So you can see there's like a huge spike around 175, which is something we'll talk about in a minute.
Yep.
And then it's sort of flat between like 75 to 150. So that really depends on the actual golfer's driving distance. And if you go to the Google sheet that I put up, you can see the projected distances that they should face per round. So you can play around with that if you want. It's all, like you said, it's all free. It's all on my Twitter right now.
Yeah, pretty awesome. And I love being able to go in and look at this. And as you know, we have the proximity stats. I put that up in my model if you're an awesemo.com plus member. If not, of course, an opportunity to see it there. But when you were analyzing it, did anything stick out to you? I've got a few at least in my eyes. You said the 175 to 200. Looks like all the par threes are in that distance or at least close to it. So you expect that one to be pretty important this week.
Yeah, for sure. And it's worth noting that I ignored the par fives in this just because obviously, sometimes they'll go for it, sometimes they won't be able to. So
that's really good to know. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't want to mess around too much with that because there's a lot more that's unaccounted for in doing something like this. But so the par threes definitely come into play for this. Review, of course, pops in this as well.
Yep, he does. I see him here 5th right now, last year in this distance. Yep.
Yeah, so it looks like from 175 and out, he'll have about 8 opportunities per round based on the sim. And he's 8th in 175 to 200 and 7th in 200 plus proximity over the last 24 rounds. So he's a guy that I already mentioned, so I'm definitely interested in him. Over the last 50 rounds, generally in proximity, Rory and McIlroy and Victor Hovland are 2 guys that have been doing particularly well. And then Tiger actually pops up in this a little bit.
Good with the mid-irons, yeah.
Yeah, he's 10th in proximity from 175 to 200. And the simulator I put together gives him about 6 chances per round from that distance. So if he's dialed in with that club or 2, I think you could see this course setting up pretty well for him.
Yeah, I got one more name to throw out at you as I've done just my quick little research, and we're at about the 11-minute mark, so So what we like to stay for these segments. And the name is Corey Connor, 7,200 this week. Had a really good finish last week. His greens in regulation was really good. Looks like we're going to get the same type of grass surfaces on the greens this week. So maybe he can carry that over. And it looks like you've got him projected right around 7 from that 175 to 200. Where do you see him over the last 50 rounds? Because I see him for the year last year as right in the top 10 or right on the preface of it as well, at least.
Yeah, he's 7th in 175 to 200, and 9th overall. He pops a little bit shorter as well, so he's definitely an interesting name. It seems like a lot of these guys that we like are in the 7K range, so we'll see how this all works out.
Yeah, maybe this is the time to really go ahead and leave some salary on the table. Although last week, that really didn't pay off with Jordan Spieth and Byung Yanan and obviously Justin Thomas winning. All of them having good weeks and being expensive. So that obviously hurt it a little bit. So Matt, thank you so much again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And this has been a lot of fun. So hopefully everyone has gotten a little bit out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again for having me.
All right, Matt. Take care. Thanks again, buddy. All right, so I just finished up there with Matt Jones at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter. Really good segment there with the approach proximity. Go ahead and check it out. Really nice little graph, and it just gives you a nice indication of where golfers are going to be hitting it from, and then match it up with, of course, the proximity numbers and see if they're good from there. And you can really get a clear indication of whether they'll be comfortable hitting these type of shots. So really, really good segment there. I actually forgot, before I brought him on, I did my first segment, and I forgot to go over my odds picks. And I always give 3 odds picks, one under 33 to 1, one under 66 to 1, and then one over 99 to 1. Yeah, I just figured that they were all thirds. Might as well keep it a little bit of continuity there to it. So this week, we are going to head to, I'll start with the 100 to 1 and over this week, since I did hit nicely with Wyndham Clark at 200 to 1 last week. The top 10 and top 20 numbers, which he hit on both, were very good returns. So we'll start up there. We're going to go Adam Long at 200 to 1 this week. He won out in the Desert Classic, which was a similar type of event where it was a little shorter of a course. Driving distance doesn't matter as much. 200 to 1 just seems pretty long, with no pun intended, for a guy that has shown time and time again to be at least somewhat competitive on the PGA Tour. Next one was a guy that we just talked about in the last couple of segments. That's Ryan Moore at 50 to 1. Seems like a pretty good price for a guy that, does not have length off the tee and is not going to need it here this week, is comfortable hitting those mid to long irons in on greens, and just needs to keep his putter going. If he hits those greens at the pace that he hit them last week, should be right up there in the top 20 with no problem. And then I want to go to Xander Schauffele at 20 to 1. Love this number for him. Got him a little longer at the Tournament of Champions last year, but 20 to 1 for a guy that loves the big stage, and no bigger stage than the first PGA tournament in Japan for a guy like him. So certainly an opportunity for Xander Schauffele at 20 to 1. So those 3 picks for the odds section of the podcast. We will, of course, be back next week for the third and final leg of the Asian Swing for the WGC HSBC Champions. And then we get a week off, believe it or not, before the tour heads over to the Sea Island Resort and then the Mayakoba Championship for the remaining 2 events on the PGA Tour schedule before the long break at the end of November through the first week of January. So look forward to a little bit of time off where I'll be able to do some more Cornerstone evergreen content that'll be available for everybody in terms of player pools and allocations, contest selections, bankroll management, cut versus no cut, showdowns, all of my sheets, how to use those, all that type of stuff. Going to get in on that month when we're off, and of course the week break when we have it coming up. So all that to look forward to. And of course the PGA Tour striking a deal with DraftKings, their partnership. Excited for what that's going to bring as well. So until next week, everybody, good luck this week with the ZOZO Championship, and enjoy, I guess, some overnight golf for the second straight week. Cheers.